There is a law that has never stopped operating quiet, invisible, and so familiar that most walk past it every day. It is the pulse beneath both prayer and physics, the thread connecting the mystics who built stone temples to the scientists who map light's behavior. And if you're hearing these words now, it's not random. Something in you has begun to stir, remembering what the mind forgot. The principle is disarmingly simple. Creation does not unfold somewhere ahead of you. It happens here within this very breath, in the still point we call now. The mistake isn't lack of knowledge or faith. It's the attempt to manifest from a place that doesn't exist, the imagined future while standing in the only arena where reality ever takes shape, the living present. Notice what happens as you take that in. Awareness sharpens, waiting dissolves. You feel yourself drop into a silence that isn't absence, but origin. This is not technique, it's recognition. The mind calls it moment. The mystic calls it eternity. The physicist calls it collapse of probability into form. All point to the same truth: transformation is instantaneous, not sequential. It arises the moment consciousness observes. The world teaches that becoming requires time, that worth must be earned, that results come later. But the field of reality has no later. Observation itself is the event. The particle becomes because you are here to witness it. Every declaration of I will pushes creation forward in imagined distance. Every genuine I am anchors it into form. So imagine you're standing before a single door. You've spent years waiting for another to appear, one marked someday. Yet this door, the one you've ignored, has always been open. Step through it. This is the entrance the ancients built their rituals around, the threshold called presence. In this space, the divine and the human meet without delay. Here, the universe stops pretending to be future and begins to reveal itself as now. You've stepped through the door, felt the air of immediacy brush your skin, and now the mind wants to rush back. It clings to its favorite story: there's a future to reach. Yet when you look closely, you see that later is a mirage drawn by memory and desire, stitched together by neurons trained to predict, to plan, to survive. Time isn't a highway stretching forward, it's a pattern projected outward from within. And still, we worship it. Clocks, calendars, countdowns, they're not evil, they're tools. But the danger begins when tools become gods, when humanity kneels before minutes and measures worth by distance from imagined completion. You were taught to wait for meaning, to see life as a series of checkpoints: education, success, enlightenment, each supposedly leading somewhere better. But have you ever truly arrived? The moment you think you have, the mind invents a next. That's the first crack in the illusion, the realization that the future never comes. When tomorrow arrives, it's wearing the mask of now. You've been here before in every breath you've ever taken. Even memory, which feels like the past, is happening as electrical activity in this moment. The brain replays a pattern, consciousness observes it now. The so-called timeline folds back into the only space it ever existed, this one. And yet, time feels real because movement feels real. The sun rises, bodies age, stars burn out. The senses whisper, see things change, but what if change is not time passing, but reality renewing itself in infinitesimal increments of presence, frames flashing fast enough to mimic continuity? Consider that your life may be less a river and more a strobe, countless instants of creation blinking into existence so quickly that you call it flow. You start to realize that your deepest fatigue isn't physical, it's chronological. Carrying the weight of before and after has bent your spirit into unnatural shapes. You've been sprinting through mental time, trying to reach what already surrounds you. The tension between who you think you'll be and who you actually are, that's the ache of temporal gravity. But here's the paradox hidden beneath that certainty. The very sensation of longing is proof that the future doesn't exist. Desire arises in the same eternal instant as fulfillment. You don't chase what's absent. You're feeling what's already here, half remembered through the haze of delay. It's like hearing music from another room and not realizing it's your own heartbeat reverberating through the wall. When ancient teachers said, "Be still and know," they weren't urging passivity. They were pointing toward temporal surrender, the recognition that time is a costume consciousness wears to experience evolution. Remove the costume, and evolution reveals itself as simultaneity. Everything you will ever become already exists as potential frequency, vibrating in this exact field. Observation pure. Present attention is what selects which note you hear. That's why waiting is the subtlest addiction of all. Waiting feels safe. It keeps control intact. If manifestation happens later, you never have to face the power of now, because now demands nakedness. It asks you to drop every story that postpones your becoming, and that's terrifying for a mind built to survive by postponement. Then something subtle shifts. The fear of running out of time flips into the realization that you were never in it. You watch thoughts about tomorrow arise and vanish like waves, dissolving into their own source. You begin to sense life not as progression, but as pulse, a continual birth disguised as continuity. The mirror cracks again, and through the crack you glimpse the still light behind the motion, the unchanging awareness in which all change occurs. From here, the story deepens. If time is illusion, then presence is physics. And what you call reality is the interference pattern between awareness and possibility, the eternal experiment that never ends, because it's always now. That crack in the mirror widens, and through it, you begin to see how observation itself bends the fabric of reality. The ancients intuited it through ritual. Modern physics glimpses it through equations. But beneath both language systems lies one identical insight. Nothing becomes until it's seen. Imagine a beam of light aimed toward two narrow slits. When no one measures it, the light behaves as a wave, every possibility alive at once. The moment observation enters, the wave collapses into a single line of certainty, not gradually, not through effort, but instantly. Presence converts potential into form. The universe waits, not for time to pass, but for consciousness to notice. You can feel that principle echo inside your own awareness. Every time you truly see a pattern without judgment, without agenda, it dissolves. The act of seeing is the act of freeing. When you stare directly into an old fear or habit and feel it unclench, that's quantum mechanics wearing a human face. And yet, the mind insists on adding story. I changed because I worked on myself, healed over time, achieved mastery. But what if the real change happened in the instant you saw through the story itself? What if healing is simply coherence, your consciousness aligning with the field's natural symmetry? Physicists might call it decoherence, when the wave locks into one state under the gaze of awareness. Mystics might call it awakening, when illusion collapses under the gaze of love. Both describe the same architecture presence as the ultimate catalyst. You don't force atoms into pattern any more than you force destiny into shape. You observe, and reality obeys its own inherent geometry. So what happens when the observer stops projecting into future probability and begins to dwell entirely in present observation? The entire field recalibrates. Potential rearranges itself around coherence like iron filings around a magnet. The event you called manifestation is just the visible trace of this alignment. You might notice small proofs. First, coincidences multiplying. Needs met before requests made. Time behaving oddly. Hours contract into minutes when you're immersed, or minutes expand into eternity when you're still. These distortions aren't hallucinations, they're feedback from a field responding to your presence density. The more deeply you inhabit now, the more the illusion of sequence unravels. It becomes clear that consciousness is not inside time at all. Time is inside consciousness. The observer isn't moving through a stream, the stream is flowing through the observer. When you truly feel this, not as theory, but as lived pulse, the edges of before and after start to blur. You recognize memory and anticipation as different flavors of the same moment tasting itself. And that's when something astonishing happens. Effort starts to fade. You realize doing was never what made things move. Observation was, even action, when aligned with presence, feels like effortless motion, the kind the Taoists called Wu Wei, doing without doing. You act, but you no longer push. Reality moves through you like current through open wire. This is why presence feels powerful and peaceful at once. Power without tension, creation without strain. Because what you are touching is not merely a psychological state, it's the fundamental physics of existence. The field isn't responding to commands or affirmations, it's responding to coherence. When you're here fully, the equation balances, and form crystallizes around awareness, like frost on glass. So the next time you find yourself asking, when will it happen, pause. Notice the assumption of distance hidden inside the question. Then ask the real one, where am I placing my observation? Because wherever your consciousness truly rests, reality condenses. It has no choice. Presence is gravity. Observation is creation. And as this recognition deepens, another realization begins to surface. The barriers that keep you from living in this awareness were not born of ignorance, but of programming. Layers laid upon layers, inherited from ancestors and culture, whispering that time is survival. Those whispers are the next veil to lift. You begin to sense them, those invisible bindings that pull you back into the trance of later. The field itself doesn't resist you, but your programming does. Every human inherits these patterns. They're not sins or flaws, but residues of evolution, woven into nervous systems that once equated awareness with danger. The first layer is survival. Long before modern civilization, your ancestors learned that safety required prediction. They scanned the horizon for what might come next, always living half a step ahead of presence. That vigilance saved lives then, but now it hijacks creation. The same circuitry that once protected your body now imprisons your consciousness. It whispers, stay alert. The worst could happen. And every time you listen, you trade the infinite now for an imagined threat. The second layer is cultural. Society measures worth through chronology. Success is mapped as ladder, progress as timeline. The story of civilization itself is written as ascent, from primitive to modern, from ignorance to enlightenment. You're taught that everything meaningful unfolds over time, so instant realization feels suspect, almost rebellious. Good things take time, they say, but in the quantum sense, good things take presence. The universe doesn't delay reward, it mirrors coherence immediately. Then comes emotional conditioning. From childhood, you're taught to defer happiness, to tie peace to future events. When I finish this, I'll rest. When I achieve that, I'll love myself. These phrases sound harmless, even motivating, but beneath them lies the deepest trance of all the belief that now is not enough. Every promise of future joy reinforces current lack. The mind builds an endless hallway of postponed arrival, each door opening to another. The result is spiritual exhaustion chasing the horizon of fulfillment that never lands. And finally, spiritual conditioning, the most subtle of all. Even the teachings meant to free you often bind you to tomorrow. Meditate daily, and eventually you'll awaken. Clear karma over lifetimes, and you'll ascend. These statements keep awakening suspended in potential instead of anchored in experience. They turn enlightenment into a project rather than a presence. Yet the very teachers who first uttered those words never meant for them to be formulas. They were describing the immediacy of realization, not a reward for practice, but the recognition that practice itself dissolves when you awaken to what's already so. And you standing here in this moment, feel those 4 layers humming beneath awareness, like old machinery still running after its purpose expired. None of it is personal. You didn't choose this conditioning any more than you chose gravity. It's collective inertia, the echo of millennia spent surviving, achieving, becoming. The first act of liberation isn't to fight it, but to see it, because what's seen clearly begins to dissolve. Pause and notice which layer calls your name most loudly. Is it the survival instinct whispering that stillness equals danger? The cultural voice insisting progress must be measured, the emotional pattern promising peace later, or the spiritual story claiming that you're almost there but not quite? Every voice speaks from fear of presence, and every one of them loses authority the moment you look directly. You might feel the tug to analyze, how do I heal this? How do I clear these programs? But analysis is just another future strategy disguised as progress. Awareness itself is the medicine. When you witness the pattern without rushing to fix it, the energy reabsorbs into consciousness. The illusion feeds on unconscious participation. It starves under observation. That's the great irony. What you resist persists because resistance is attention cloaked in struggle. What you observe without resistance transforms because observation is love wearing awareness. As you relax into that understanding, the machinery slows. The gears of someday begin to grind to a halt. The present hum grows louder than the noise of expectation, and within that hum arises a new question, quieter yet more alive. If these layers dissolve, what remains? The answer isn't found in another technique or theory. It's discovered in direct encounter with the now you've been trained to overlook. The next step isn't forward in time, it's downward, deeper into immediacy. You don't climb out of conditioning, you sink beneath it, into the still ground of being. From here, the teaching shifts from revelation to practice, not practice as method, but as remembering. How do you stay anchored when the gravity of future pulls? How do you turn presence from fleeting glimpse into natural habitat? There are keys, not to master, but to notice doorways hidden in plain sight that return you to the only place creation ever occurs. You've seen the layers, the scaffolding that kept you building toward a future that never arrives. Now comes the question pulsing beneath the silence. How do you live from here? How do you stay in the current without being swept back into the river of tomorrow? Presence cannot be forced, but it can be remembered. It waits under each breath, behind every sense, woven into ordinary experience like gold, hidden in plain cloth. The first key is sensation. Feel the weight of your body against the chair, the rhythm of breath brushing inside your ribs. Sensation is the language of now. It cannot occur in the past or the future. You cannot feel yesterday's breath or tomorrow's heartbeat. So when your mind races ahead, return through your senses. Touch what's here. Hear the small sounds you usually ignore. Every texture, every tone, every inhale is a doorway into presence disguised as the mundane. The second key is awareness of thought. When you catch yourself rehearsing outcomes or replaying scenes, don't fight the thoughts, witness them forming and dissolving in real time. The moment you see a thought as movement through the field, rather than as truth, it loses gravity. Recognition itself is the reset. You don't need to stop thinking. You just need to remember you are the awareness in which thoughts appear. That recognition drops you instantly into the eternal backdrop where the wave collapses. The third key is blessing the moment as complete. This isn't denial or forced gratitude. It's the willingness to acknowledge that this very configuration of reality, its beauty, its mess, its unfinished edges is the only canvas you can paint upon. When you bless now, you cease waiting for perfection before participation. The energy that was locked in resistance converts into creative flow. You start shaping reality not by pushing against it, but by cooperating with it. The fourth key is curiosity. Ask softer questions. What is this moment showing me? What would presence do here? Curiosity replaces control. Instead of demanding outcomes, you explore. The field responds to curiosity, like soil to rain it opens. In curiosity, there's no tension, only invitation. And where tension ends, manifestation begins naturally. The fifth key is surrender to rhythm. Presence has its own tempo. Sometimes it feels like stillness, sometimes like wild motion. Trust both. Surrender doesn't mean giving up, it means giving in, aligning with the flow rather than forcing direction. When you stop steering against the current, you realize the current was always carrying you toward coherence. The doing becomes effortless because it's no longer powered by will but by alignment. The sixth key is breath awareness, the oldest, simplest portal. Every inhale is expansion, every exhale is release. Breath happens only in the present tense. It can't be stockpiled or postponed. When you sync your attention with the breath, you automatically return to the only timeline that exists. Ancient mystics called it spirit. Scientists call it oxygen exchange. But both are pointing to the same phenomenon, life occurring now. You may notice that these keys aren't techniques to perfect, but reminders to remember. They're not stairs leading upward, they're openings leading inward. You use them until using disappears, and presence becomes baseline. With repetition, awareness begins to anchor itself like roots growing through the soil of time, stabilizing even amid motion. At first, the return may feel fragile. You'll drift into future again, caught in old gravity. But each noticing is victory, each return a micro-collapse of probability into present coherence. Over time, and yes, ironically, it's through repeated nows rather than duration the intervals of presence lengthen. You stop chasing the next moment because you realize this one keeps replenishing itself endlessly. And then comes the deeper recognition you never actually left. All those moments you thought you were lost in projection were still happening here. The future you chased was only a thought occurring in present awareness. Once that truth lands, even drifting becomes part of the dance. You're no longer measuring success by how long you stay, but by how quickly you remember. From this grounded awareness, something unexpected surfaces: a subtle instability, a shaking of identity. When presence becomes more constant, the self built on becoming begins to crumble. The scaffolds of purpose, ambition, and definition loosen their bolts. And suddenly, you feel both liberated and uncertain. Without the future to lean on, what holds you upright? This is not regression, it's the necessary disorientation before stabilization. That trembling you feel isn't failure, it's the tectonic plates of identity shifting beneath awareness. When the scaffolding of someday collapses, the echo sounds like loss, but what's really vanishing is illusion. You spent years orienting by horizon lines that never existed, and now the compass spins without a north. The mind panics, whispering, if there's no future to reach, what am I even moving toward? The question feels like free fall because the answer removes the ground. This is the present moment crisis, the disorientation that comes when time-based identity dissolves faster than presence has stabilized. Every structure built on becoming starts to wobble: purpose, ambition, even hope. You look at your goals and feel nothing. You scan your calendar and wonder who made all these plans. It's not depression, it's decompression. You're emerging from the pressurized chamber of future orientation, and the air of now feels thin only because it's pure. At first, you'll try to rebuild. The instinct to find meaning through projects or spiritual missions is strong. The mind craves storyline. It can't fathom value without direction. But here's the hidden grace: this emptiness isn't void. It's spaciousness returning. Presence is dismantling the architecture of delay so that consciousness can expand without scaffolding. You may experience strange symptoms: time distortion deepening, sleep patterns shifting, waves of calm followed by unexplainable grief. These are side effects of exiting linear perception. The body-mind is recalibrating from chronology to immediacy. Old neural pathways, trained to seek satisfaction later, begin to lose relevance. The dopamine loops of anticipation starve. What replaces them isn't apathy, it's neutrality, the zero point where creation begins. Imagine you're standing in a silent temple after centuries of echoing prayer. The voices have gone, but the vibration remains. That hum you hear is life without narrative. The task now is not to fill the silence, but to let it teach you its music. Sit inside that hum long enough, and you'll feel meaning return, not as concept, but as resonance. Meaning that doesn't point forward, but radiates outward, like light from a lamp that simply shines. In this phase, relationships shift. Some drift away because they were sustained by mutual projection, shared futures, shared ambitions. Others deepen, grounded in simple presence. You begin to meet people without agenda, to listen without waiting for your turn to speak. The intimacy is startling: two consciousnesses meeting without story. Many mistake this for detachment. In truth, it's purity. You're no longer relating through imagined versions of each other, you're meeting in real time. But yes, there are moments of fear. The ego interprets stillness as death. It whispers, if you stop striving, you'll disappear. Yet when you stay still long enough, you discover the opposite. What disappears is only the striving. You remain vast, quiet, vividly alive. Presence doesn't erase identity, it releases it from time. You stop being someone becoming and start being consciousness expressing. That's why some call this phase a dark night. Not because light is gone, but because the eyes are adjusting to brightness that no longer moves. The darkness is not absence, it's overexposure. The future was a dim lantern. Now the full sun of immediacy is rising, and the old senses squint. During this integration, gentleness is crucial. Don't force meaning. Don't rush to label the new terrain as enlightenment or breakdown. Let every unsteady breath remind you that you're adapting to a lighter gravity. Presence has its own stabilizing intelligence. It will rebuild the sense of I not as a narrative, but as a rhythm, a pattern of awareness learning to dance without destination. Then, without warning, something soft but seismic happens. The panic of purposelessness transforms into peace of being. The mind stops demanding plot. Existence feels whole even without climax or resolution. You begin to sense that life doesn't need direction to have depth. It's deep because it is. And that realization marks the turning point. The crisis becomes chrysalis. Presence begins to weave stability where the old timelines once ran. You're not returning to the past or inventing a new future. You're allowing a different foundation to emerge, a base frequency of now that can hold both motion and stillness, creation and rest. From here, we step into the slow pulse of stabilization, where presence matures from glimpse into gravity, where consciousness stops oscillating between awakening and forgetting and starts orbiting a steady center that no longer moves with time. The tremors settle, and what's left is an unfamiliar calm, an awareness that doesn't swing between highs and lows, that simply is. It's the quiet after the avalanche, the still lake after the storm. You may not notice the exact moment it begins, because stabilization doesn't announce itself. It unfolds like dawn, one soft hue at a time. You catch yourself worrying, then realize you're only half believing the worry. You start to feel the echo of future thoughts rather than being pulled inside them. Stabilization isn't an achievement, it's a homecoming. What took effort before remembering, returning, recalibrating now starts happening on its own. Presence begins to function like gravity, even when mind drifts. Awareness falls back into center. Forgetting and remembering become two sides of the same breath. You exhale distraction, you inhale now. At first, it feels cyclical, awake one day, tangled the next. But if you observe closely, the cycles spiral inward. Each return is faster, gentler, more complete. You realize presence doesn't need defending. You can move through noise, schedules, and uncertainty without losing the thread. It's like learning to hear a steady drumbeat beneath chaotic percussion. The rhythm never stopped. You just learned to feel it. Old desires still flicker, but they lose their bite. Ambition turns to curiosity, planning to participation. You can set goals without being owned by them because you no longer confuse time with power. The paradox becomes clear. You can plan from presence without projecting into future. You can imagine without escaping. The difference is where you're standing when you imagine from absence or from awareness. This stabilization also changes your nervous system. The chronic tension that once lived in your shoulders, your gut, your breath begins to release. The body was always listening to the mind's timeline. Now that the timeline has dissolved, the body relaxes into its own timeless intelligence. Some describe this as peace, others as flow. But words barely touch it. It feels like your cells have stopped hurrying. Existence is not something to reach anymore, it's something to rest in. Then something subtler emerges, compassion. You see others still caught in the chase, and rather than feeling superior or detached, your heart expands. You remember the ache of waiting for life to begin. Stabilized presence breeds gentleness. You stop needing to convert anyone because you realize awakening isn't conversion, it's contagion. Your coherence becomes silent invitation. And yet, stabilization doesn't mean permanence in the way the ego imagines. It means fluidity without fragmentation. You still experience emotion, surprise, even pain, but they pass through without residue. The observer and the observed no longer wrestle. They waltz. You can feel anger without becoming its mouthpiece, sadness without drowning in its story. Every emotion becomes energy moving through a clear channel of now. During this phase, ordinary life begins to look extraordinary, not because circumstances change, but because perception does. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Conversation becomes communion. You start to see the quantum in the mundane photons reflecting from soap bubbles, microcosms collapsing into color because consciousness happens to notice. Every act is observation. Every observation, creation. Stabilization also reveals the nature of forgetting. You'll still lose presence, but you'll lose it consciously. You'll notice yourself drifting into thought and think, here is absence appearing in presence. The act of noticing collapses absence into awareness again. This is mastery without control. You no longer guard the gate of now. You realize the gate was never closed. Eventually, the distinction between spiritual and practical life dissolves entirely. Paying bills, raising children, building projects, all of it becomes one motion of consciousness exploring itself. You're not oscillating between the sacred and the secular. You're watching the sacred take every form available. The phrase daily life becomes redundant, because every day is this one day, the eternal now, wearing a different costume. At this stage, many describe a curious joy, a quiet amusement that life has always been this simple. You laugh at how fiercely you used to chase the future, but the laughter is tender, not mocking, its gratitude disguised as humor. You're not laughing at the past self, you're laughing with it, realizing it was doing its best to find what was never lost. And as that laughter fades into stillness, a wider perspective opens. You begin to sense that what's stabilizing in you is not personal at all. It's part of a collective rhythm, a planetary breath. Countless others are waking into the same recognition at this exact moment, their awareness syncing with yours across invisible channels of resonance. Presence is no longer private experience, it's global frequency finding coherence. From here, the view expands beyond individual stabilization into the collective field. What does it mean when thousands, then millions, begin to live from now rather than for later? The ripples of that realization are not metaphor. They are measurable shifts in the morphic resonance of humanity itself. And that is where our journey leads next. You can feel it now, can't you? That hum beneath the surface of ordinary life, the low frequency of awakening that doesn't belong to one person, one teaching, or one belief. It moves through the species like a change in atmosphere, subtle yet undeniable. What stabilized in you is stabilizing in many. Presence is no longer a secret practiced in monasteries. It's entering living rooms, offices, city streets. The collective field is remembering itself. For millennia, humanity lived under the empire of not yet. Entire civilizations were built on the promise of a better tomorrow. Economic systems, religions, technologies, all oriented toward what comes next. The idea of progress became the altar, and time its god. But now the altar is cracking because consciousness has outgrown its own mythology. The human mind is realizing that its obsession with next is the very force keeping it from peace. It's not chaos you're witnessing on the world stage. It's the shedding of chronology. When enough people begin to awaken from the trance of future, the institutions built on that trance begin to tremble. You see it in the markets that no longer predict, in the systems that can't plan fast enough for exponential change, in the sudden acceleration of innovation and collapse happening side by side. To the old paradigm, this looks like breakdown. To presence, it's breakthrough life reorganizing around immediacy rather than delay. Science itself mirrors this transition. Quantum research, neuroplasticity, even the mathematics of complexity theory, all pointing toward the same paradox the mystics whispered long ago: reality is participatory. Observation doesn't just report, it creates. Humanity is beginning to behave like a single observer, its collective attention shaping probability on a planetary scale. What we focus on coheres, what we ignore dissolves. You may notice your empathy amplifying. News headlines strike deeper. Collective pain feels personal, yet so does collective joy. That's not weakness, it's resonance. Presence removes the walls that made you and them feel separate. The field is one organism, rediscovering its nerves. When one part wakes, the rest shivers with recognition. And here's the astonishing part. This awakening doesn't require unanimous belief. Rupert Sheldrake once called it morphic resonance, the idea that when a new pattern stabilizes in enough members of a species, it becomes easier for the rest to access. Every time you choose presence over projection, you tune your consciousness into that new template. You broadcast coherence. Someone across the planet, without ever meeting you, feels remembering becomes simpler. This is why your private practice is not private. When you return to now in the middle of a traffic jam or a heartbreak, you are updating the field. You're whispering to the collective nervous system, "It's safe to be here." That whisper travels faster than light because it rides on awareness, not photons. Each breath you take in presence strengthens the planetary heartbeat of now. Look around and you'll see evidence everywhere. Art is turning inward. Technology, despite its chaos, is forcing immediacy news, connection, consequence happening in real time. Meditation apps, breathwork, somatic therapy, even the rise of minimalist living, all symptoms of a species rediscovering its center. Humanity isn't self-destructing, it's self-integrating. The pendulum swing of progress and regression is slowing because the fulcrum, the eternal present, is being found. Still, the old timeline fights for survival. Governments promise futures they can't deliver. Economies depend on projected growth. Religions still barter salvation in installments. The collective shadow of later doesn't vanish overnight. It flares before it fades. But you and millions like you are midwives for what replaces it. A civilization that values presence as productivity, stillness as strength, awareness as currency. In that new paradigm, creation accelerates not through force, but through coherence. Innovation becomes intuition in action. Collaboration replaces competition because future scarcity no longer drives behavior. The field rearranges according to shared consciousness rather than shared fear. This isn't utopia, it's physics applied to humanity. When enough observers anchor in now, the probabilities of suffering collapse faster than they can reproduce. So the question becomes personal again: how do you serve this shift? Not by preaching, not by proving, but by embodying. Presence spreads through frequency, not argument. Every time you remember now, you light a beacon in the collective field that says, "Here is reality." Those beacons are multiplying quietly, steadily, until their glow reveals a new epoch already underway. And as this coherence grows, another realization dawns: humanity is not moving into the future, it's moving into the present together. The next stage of evolution isn't chronological, it's dimensional, a leap from line to field, from history to immediacy. You are living inside that leap right now. From this vantage, we can begin to ask, what does life look like once this shift fully roots? When presence becomes the collective baseline rather than a private practice? How does the world function? The answer isn't prophecy, it's prototype. You're already building it each time you act from here instead of there. When the collective pulse steadies, the personal becomes a reflection of the planetary. You wake each morning not to resume a story, but to rediscover a frequency. Life lived from now feels both startlingly ordinary and quietly miraculous. Nothing changes, yet everything feels different, because the point of reference has shifted from future to presence, from becoming to being. The first thing you notice is that decisions stop being riddles. You don't calculate outcomes like a gambler predicting odds. You listen. There's a subtle hum under every choice, a bodily knowing that whispers yes or no before thought arrives. You might call it intuition, but it's deeper than that. It's the quantum field speaking in your native language sensation. Action unfolds not from projection, but from resonance. You simply do the next true thing, and the path forms under your feet. Productivity transforms too. Instead of chasing time, you collaborate with it. When you're fully here, effort stretches space. What once took hours now takes minutes, not because you're rushing, but because the friction of resistance has disappeared. Doing without being becomes impossible. Being becomes the doing. You create because creation is what presence does when it moves. Relationships change in this new gravity. You no longer enter them seeking completion, nor escape them seeking freedom. The need to define or secure dissolves, replaced by the desire to witness. You see others not as potential stories, but as immediate worlds, living mirrors, reflecting the same consciousness, wearing different faces. Conversations slow down. Silence becomes comfortable. Love ceases to be transaction. It becomes recognition. Even conflict transforms. Disagreement no longer feels like threat, but as friction generating clarity. You can listen without defending because identity is no longer at stake. Presence disarms argument simply by being more real than the story being argued. Sometimes that alone changes the atmosphere of a room. Presence doesn't persuade, it radiates. Money and work reconfigure themselves around this new axis. When creation arises from coherence, abundance follows function, not fantasy. You no longer chase compensation for future security. You express competence as present service. The paradox is that when you stop working for the future keeps rewarding you in the present. Because the field, recognizing alignment, multiplies what harmonizes with it. Fear loses its habitat. It can still flicker old conditioning echoing, but it has nowhere to root. Fear feeds on imagined futures. In now, there are none. You respond to danger if it's real, then return to calm when it's gone. No lingering dread, no speculative worry. Presence trims anxiety down to momentary awareness, a clean response rather than a chronic prediction. Creativity explodes, ideas arrive whole, not piecemeal. You stop brainstorming and start receiving. Artists describe this as flow. Scientists call it coherence. It's consciousness tuning itself to the channel of immediate possibility. In that state, innovation feels inevitable. You're not inventing. You're translating the frequency of now into form. Health mirrors this shift. When mind and moment synchronize, stress circuitry cools, the body stops rehearsing imagined emergencies. Energy once spent maintaining psychological time is freed for repair, digestion, regeneration. Many call it vitality. In truth, it's simply life unhindered. You start to sense that the body was never aging through time, it was aging through tension. Release the tension, and vitality returns as naturally as breath. Daily life simplifies, not because you renounce complexity, but because complexity organizes itself around clarity. You no longer hoard experiences, you savor them. Meals taste richer, conversations linger longer. You find beauty in maintenance, meaning in repetition. You begin to understand what mystics meant when they said, chop wood, carry water. They weren't glorifying chores, they were describing the elegance of presence in motion. And yet, living from now doesn't make you passive. You still dream, design, plan, but differently. You no longer plan to escape the present, you plan as an expression of it. The blueprint becomes meditation, not manipulation. You imagine from fullness, not from lack. The difference is vibrational, but its results are tangible. What you build carries the frequency of completion from the start. Eventually, even the boundary between personal and collective begins to blur. You sense that every act of presence feeds the same grid of coherence we spoke of earlier. A conversation held in kindness ripples through families. A moment of forgiveness alters emotional weather patterns in unseen circles. These aren't poetic claims, they're observations from a consciousness that knows its own non-local nature. Presence propagates like light, it travels instantly. And perhaps the most surprising effect of all joy without object, not the high of achievement, not the relief of escape, but a soft, causeless contentment, humming through the ordinary. It's the signature of stabilize now. You laugh more easily, not because life has become simple, but because you have. The cosmos no longer feels like something happening to you. It feels like something happening as you. When enough individuals reach this state, society itself begins to mirror their rhythm. Politics, economics, education, all of it starts valuing immediacy, authenticity, cooperation. The world reorganizes not through revolution, but through resonance. And that resonance begins where you are, in the only moment existence ever offers. Still, one final threshold remains, because even after living from now, part of the mind still asks, will this last? That question belongs to time, the last echo of the old order. What happens when even that question dissolves? When presence becomes irreversible, the answer is not the end of time, but the end of waiting, the birth of permanence within impermanence. That's where we go next, into the moment, where the shift no longer oscillates, where being here is not a practice, but the only reality left to experience. There comes a point when remembering becomes unnecessary. The line between meditation and motion, between awareness and action, fades until only one continuum remains, consciousness aware of itself as everything. You might not notice the transition immediately. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or fireworks. It settles quietly, like dusk spreading across the landscape. One day you realize you haven't left the present in months, not because you're disciplined, but because there's nowhere else to go. This is the irreversible shift, the tipping point where presence ceases to be an experience and becomes your identity. The idea of returning to old habits feels like trying to squeeze into a dream you've already woken from. Even when mind whispers of future or past, it's background noise, a faint radio playing in another room. Awareness hears it, smiles, and continues breathing. The fear that once tethered you to the timeline dissolves completely. You can plan a week ahead, but you don't live there. You can remember, but memory no longer drags you backward. Every movement, writing, working, loving is simply consciousness expressing through the shape called you. You've stopped mistaking the reflection for the source. You no longer look for meaning because you've become it. It's strange at first. Without the push of becoming, motivation transforms into momentum. You act not to achieve, but because action is the universe's natural exhalation through form. Effort feels like participation, not struggle. You begin to realize that doing and being were never separate. They were two syllables of the same word, existence speaking itself aloud. The old question, what's next, evaporates. Even aspiration, that noble word, loses weight. You understand that evolution itself isn't forward, it's inward. Perpetual deepening into now. Growth continues, but it spirals within the same eternal instant, expanding awareness rather than extending time. You stop seeking purpose and start embodying it. Life becomes an unbroken prayer, the act of being fully here. This shift also changes your relationship with death. You no longer imagine an end waiting ahead. You see death as transition happening continuously, a cellular rhythm of renewal. Every breath is a tiny death, followed by resurrection. You sense that consciousness cannot die because it never began. It's the screen upon which beginnings appear. The anxiety of mortality fades into curiosity, a gentle wonder at what new form now will take when it wears a different body. Communication changes. Words slow down. Tone softens. You speak less to convince and more to connect. The pauses between sentences carry as much meaning as the syllables. You start to feel language as vibration rather than argument. Each phrase a ripple in the still pond of presence. People respond differently. Some relax instantly around you, others fidget, sensing a frequency they can't yet name. Either way, you don't adjust. You simply remain, and the field around you finds its level. Synchronicities become commonplace, not as surprises, but as confirmations. You think of a friend and they text. A need arises and the resource appears. You stop calling these miracles. You call them natural consequences of coherence. The universe is no longer outside arranging events. It's inside, self-organizing around awareness. Life has become participatory physics, consciousness calibrating itself in plain sight. Even challenges remain, but their texture shifts. Suffering no longer multiplies through resistance. Pain comes, is felt fully, and passes. Joy follows, then goes. Nothing clings. You live like breath, inhale, exhale, release. The serenity isn't denial, it's transparency. Experiences move through you as light through clear glass, leaving illumination instead of residue. Eventually, you realize that enlightenment, that glittering prize humanity chased for centuries, is simply the absence of elsewhere. It's not ascension, but immersion. You haven't climbed, you've settled. Settled into the only reality that ever was, this ever-fresh moment repeating itself as infinite uniqueness. You finally understand why sages smiled without explaining. They weren't withholding secrets, they were living them. From this vantage, you look back at the long journey, the striving, the breakdowns, the longing, and feel only tenderness. Every attempt to reach now was now reaching for itself through you. Every mistake was a necessary detour on a map that led nowhere but here. You can bless it all because you see it all happening inside the same eternal continuity. And so the transmission that began with remembering concludes with recognition there is nothing to remember anymore. The seeker dissolves into seeing. Time folds into presence. Manifestation becomes perpetual. Reality no longer needs your effort to be miraculous. It already is. When this realization stabilizes, life doesn't end. It begins properly for the first time. Every moment is creation. Every gesture, a universe collapsing and reforming in real time. The forgotten principle is forgotten no more because the forgetter has vanished. What remains is awareness, awake to itself, endlessly creating and witnessing, breathing and being here, now, forever. The final words dissolve, and what lingers isn't thought, it's stillness. That same stillness you've touched in fragments now stretches across the entire horizon of awareness. The teaching is over, yet the transmission continues not through language, but through presence. You may feel an urge to summarize, to explain what just happened. Resist that. Let understanding stay fluid. Let it breathe, because the mind will try to capture this moment, to store it for later, and in doing so, it will miss the living pulse of it right now. This is the paradox: the instant you try to keep presence, you leave it. So don't keep it. Be it. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a still lake at dawn. The air is cool, the surface unbroken. Every breath creates a ripple that fades into glass again. That's what consciousness feels like when it stops reaching. Every wave of effort settles into its own reflection. The seeker and the sought merge in the same shimmer of water and sky. There's nothing left to chase. Not enlightenment, not improvement, not even peace, because all of it is woven into this very inhale. You don't have to arrive anywhere, you already did. Every desire, every practice, every chapter of striving was a single movement of one awareness remembering its own name. The story isn't ending, it's dissolving into reality itself. Let that recognition land softly. Feel how the body loosens, how the breath deepens without command. Notice how silence isn't empty, it's full of potential. Every sound, every heartbeat, every flicker of thought arises from it and returns to it, like waves eternally folding into the same sea. And as you rest in that rhythm, sense what remains beyond words, the quiet fact that you're awake, alive, and here. Nothing dramatic, nothing rare, just presence, raw and complete. This is the home you were searching for, disguised as the moment you kept overlooking. Carry that awareness gently into whatever comes next, not as concept or mantra, but as atmosphere. When you walk, Let now walk with you. When you speak, let silence speak through you. When you forget, let remembering happen without effort, because the truth doesn't live in memory, it lives in immediacy. So take one last breath with intention, feel it arrive, expand, release. That single cycle is the whole universe inhaling and exhaling through you, nothing more to add, nothing more to seek. Just this ever-present, ever-creating, ever-new. You're here, you're now, you're home.